الكافي لمن سأل عن الدواء الشافي. The sufficient answer for the one asking about the disease and its remedy. The sufficient answer for the one asking about a disease or a sickness and the cure for that sickness, right? And subhanAllah, it's a very important work. It's something I encourage all of you to get if you can, if you have that opportunity. It's available in English. I've been trying in earnest to get it up on that WhatsApp group. I just got the Arabic up today. I had been sending it different ways and finally figured out I literally had to look it up, like how to send big files on WhatsApp. And I finally figured out a way to do it. So I got the Arabic up, and inshallah, hopefully today when we're done today, I'll get the English one up inshallah as well. But it's a very good book that I would encourage you to read. And it's something that it's relatively straightforward and not overly complicated. You can read it yourself, all right? It's relative, yes, sir.
Is there a way to put it on your TV? Will you pull this stuff up on your TV?
The book itself?
All the stuff.
Or the audio?
Yeah, the audio. Is there a way to do it on TV where you can see it? It's hard to get
And like listen to it?
Oh, I can see it.
Yes.
Put it on TV and like turn up the sound.
I got you, yes. Yes, I do. Matter of fact, in that WhatsApp group, I've already sent some links. Because at another masjid, I'm going through this book in its entirety.
So you hook your phone to the TV? Or?
Yes, you can hook your phone up to the TV, you know what I'm saying, and then have it there. So you got like a smart, well, talk to me afterwards, inshallah, and I'll walk you through it.
I'm going to go buy one, so I'm going to buy the right thing.
I got you. Okay, I got you. Matter of fact, interestingly enough, we just brought one in the office, so I'll walk you through it, inshallah. Okay. All right, after the class, inshallah. Play it. So, I mean, as far as the book is concerned, what we covered last week, just real quick to get everybody up to speed. So there was a young man, right? He sent in a letter asking the Sheikh, I'm struggling with something. I'm dealing with the sin. I'm, fighting it as best as I can, and I'm putting up a fight. But no matter how much I try, matter of fact, the more I try, it only seems to increase in intensity, right? And I'm struggling with this. I know it's going to be the death of me and the end of me, both my worldly life, right, my material daily living, and ultimately, and even more importantly, in the hereafter. So what should I do, Sheikh? What can I do? Right? And Imam Ibn Al-Qayyim, rahimahullah, he answers or responds by writing this book, right, as a response entirely to this young man's question, right? And again, why I chose, to go through it here is because, كما قاله النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم كل بني آدم خطاء وخير الخطائين توابون, that all of the sons of Adam, and all, of course, meaning the daughters of Adam as well, everybody's struggling with something. Everybody's got some sins. Everybody's got some, like I said, skeletons in their closet that maybe nobody knows about. Only you and Allah know about. But nonetheless, every single one of us got something. Ain't nobody getting out of here scot-free. But with that being said, he said, وَخَيْرَ الْخَطَّائِينَ تَوَابُونَ. But in spite of all of us having sins, right, the best of us are those who are continually and perpetually going back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and asking for his forgiveness. So the first thing the Sheikh he does is he tells him, this young man, a statement of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Before he goes explaining and elaborating and putting his own words, first thing he does, he puts square front and center are the words of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. وَخَيْرُ الْهَدِي هُدَى مُحَمَّدٍ صلى الله عليه وسلم. And the best of guidance is that of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And what he mentions is لِكُلِّ دَاءٍ دَوَاءٌ فَإِذَا أُصِيبَ دَوَاءُ الدَّاء بَرِئَ بِإِذْنِ اللَّهِ أو بَرَأَ بِإِذْنِ اللَّهِ. That every sickness, every disease has a cure. Every single one, right? And there's other narrations where the Prophet ﷺ says every single one except for one, which is death. There is no cure for death, right? But every other sickness, there's a cure for it, right? He says, and so if that remedy, if that cure, if it strikes and hits the disease or the poison, right? He said it will wipe it out, it will deal with it, by the permission of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so he explains, right, what this does. By him sharing this hadith, first and foremost, one of the first things that we learn is that, number one, the role that you should have, if you're a mentor, if you're a teacher, if you're an imam, if you're a parent, if you're an older sibling, right? Whenever being in that role of guiding someone else in some way, shape, or form, your primary function, your primary responsibility is connecting people to Allah and His Messenger. Your primary function is connecting people to Allah and His Messenger, right? In spite of this being an illustrious imam, first thing he does, qala Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the Messenger of Allah said. And he brings a statement that brings hope to people who might be in the same predicament as this person, right? Which, as I already said, every single one of us have skeletons in our closet. Some might have graveyards full of bones, but nonetheless, everybody's got something that they're dealing with, that they're struggling with, that they're a habit that they kicked years ago, and it reared its ugly head again, and it came back again, and it fell off the wagon again. But this gives us hope. Another lesson that we learn is that this young man, right, who's struggling, who's dealing with something, he does, right, what a lot of us can learn from is that he asks for help. Some people might be struggling with and dealing with mental health. Some people might be struggling and dealing with depression, anxiety, drugs, alcohol, akramakumullah, sex. It could be lowering their gaze. It could be pornography. Something where they're struggling with it. It's hard for them, it's something hard for them to cope with. It could be a relationship. It could be anger problems. Whatever it might be, somebody might be struggling with something, right? And what all too often happens is that instead of asking for help, people struggle in silence. And things get worse and worse, and they don't ask for help. A husband and a wife could be struggling in their relationship, and they don't ask for help. They don't go to therapy. They don't get a counselor. They don't speak to an imam. They don't do anything about it. They could be struggling with their relationship with their sons and their daughters. And again, they don't ask for help. They don't ask for anybody because it's aib. It's aib. We don't want people to know what's happening in our house. What will our relatives say? What will the other people say about us? Astaghfirullah. And a lot of people struggle in silence. And that's not what we should do. There's nothing wrong with asking for help. Matter of fact, it is encouraged. You should ask for help. If you're struggling with something, then you should be reaching out and you should be looking for help. Right? And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He guides us on who you should be asking for help. You should be careful about who you ask for help. Don't just ask anybody. Right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَاسْأَلُوا أَهْلِ الذِّكْرِ إِن كُنْتُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. Ask the people of remembrance if it is that you do not know. Ask the experts. Ask the scholars. If it is that you're struggling with an Islamic issue and a problem, you have doubts, desires, etc., ask a sheikh, ask an imam. If you're struggling and wrestling with marital problems and issues, and the imam, he's not available, or he doesn't have the time, or he's not equipped for one reason or another, a marriage therapist, a licensed counselor. This is something that should be done. If somebody's struggling with a mental health issue, something, again, that a lot of people suffer in silence, and they don't ask for help. And this young man, he doesn't do that. He does what? He asks for help. And this is what, a big lesson that we can all learn for ourselves, brothers and sisters. Al-Muhim. So the other thing then is if you are if you're the one who's asking for help, those who may not be struggling, those who may be better off in a particular area or situation, then what should they be doing? They should be the other side. They should be the mirror for that brother or sister, and they should be at the service of their brothers and sisters. They should empathize with their brothers and sisters. They should be helping their brothers and sisters, being that shoulder just to lean on, and that ear that listens and understands. You may not even understand. Somebody might be going through something, you'd be like, man, I can't even imagine, right? But just you listening might be all that they need. Wallahi, brothers and sisters, you don't know how many times somebody comes and says, Sheikh, I need to talk to you. Imam, I need to talk to you. I need some help. Sit down, and I kid you not, I'll be listening to somebody for like 30, 40 minutes. I ain't said nothing. And they'll say, thank you. I really appreciate that. That helped. Appreciate, like, I didn't do nothing. I didn't say nothing. And they figure out what they need. Just listening, somebody might talk themselves and they think they have a chance to, like, you serve as like a sounding board, and they get to hear themselves think things out loud, and they figure out the problem. And in hearing the problem out loud, they figure out, they know exactly what they need to do. Like, you know what, I know exactly what I need to do. Thanks, man. I'm like, alhamdulillah, you know what I'm saying? All in a day's work. May Allah make it easy for you. Even if you don't, just listen to somebody. So that's, right, the counterbalance to that. Somebody might be struggling with something. If that doesn't happen to be you in that particular situation, then be the one who is helping. And this is what the Imam does. He gives them hope from the words of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And then he goes on to say, right, capitalizing on that, he says, وَهَذَا يَعُمُّ أَدْوَاءَ الْقَلْبِ وَالرُّوحِ وَالْبَدْنِ وَأَدْوِيَتَهَا. He said, and that statement, that every disease has a cure, he said that includes, right, or this includes every disease of the heart, the soul, and the body, right? Every single one of them has a solution, has a cure, i.e., it shouldn't just be thought of in terms of a cold and some medication, or the flu and some medication. He's saying no. The Prophet's not only talking about sicknesses like that. It could be a spiritual ailment. It could be a physical ailment. It could be something that's happening in your heart. So that means what? It could just be a problem in your life. It could be a challenge that you're facing. Every challenge has a solution. Every problem has something, right, to answer it. That's how we can understand this. And again, that gives us what? That gives us hope. That's supposed to inspire and motivate us to understand that. And he's explained in the hadith that the Prophet said. All right? طيب. And then the Sheikh, he goes on and he says, all right, look, every sickness has a cure. And I almost forgot too. The last one he says, he gives a practical example to show that the Prophet ﷺ wasn't only talking about sicknesses like the cold, flu, germs, viruses, but he was talking about problems, challenges, issues, spiritual and otherwise as well. So he said, وَقَدْ جَعَلَ النَّبِيُّ صلى الله عليه وسلم الجهل داءً وَجَعَلَ دَوَاءَهُ سُؤَالَ الْعُلَمَاءِ. He said, look, the Prophet, peace be upon him, he considered ignorance to be a filthy disease. Ignorance is a disease, right? And the cure for it, the remedy for it, is to ask the people of knowledge, to ask the scholars, the Sheikh, the Imam, the student of knowledge, right? طيب. And this we for the most part, I mean, barring some extra things we're adding here, most of that we covered last week. Then he mentions there are two powerful tools that the Muslim has, the believer has at their disposal, that are there's nothing more effective, more powerful, more potent in dealing with sicknesses and cures, right? Dealing with sicknesses and poisons. The Quran and dua. And we talked at length last week about dua, and about the Quran, and that's where we stopped. It was about the Quran and the importance of having a relationship with the Quran. And that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, how he mentions, Ya ayyuhan nas, قد جاءتكم موعظة من ربكم وشفاء لما في الصدور وهدى ورحمة للمؤمنين. Right? That, O humanity, there has come to you an exhortation, a reminder, right, from your Lord, right, that he has sent down, and it is a cure-all. وَشِفَاءٌ لِمَا فِي الصُّدُورِ. And it cures everything that might be ailing you in your chest. Whether it's doubts, desires, whatever it might be, the Quran is a cure-all. And not only that, but it is guidance and it is mercy for the people who believe, right? And so in order to actualize that in your personal life, for you yourself, you got to have a relationship with the Quran. It can't be on Saturday and Sunday. It can't be once in a while. It can't be when I have a problem, that's when I have a relationship with the Quran. That's when I try to read it. Can't just be I read it because Abu and Hoya said so and they dragged me there to the Mahad or to the Duksi or to the Madrasa or to the Sunday school or whatever. Or I only read it in Ramadan. You have to have a relationship with the Quran. And that relationship, right, in general, is going to look different for everybody. But at the bare minimum, there should be something that you're reading on a daily basis. There should be something that you're reading, Ibrahim. How often? On a daily basis, every day. Not once a month, not just on Jumu'ah while you're waiting for the Salat to happen, and for the Salat to pop off, or the khutbah, but every day. And like I said, what that looks like might translate to be different, but you should have some amount that you are reading on your own, not because you're forced to, not because you have to finish your ashar for something, but for who, Sheikh? Sheikh, for who? Who should it be for? Who's making you do it? Yourself. Not somebody else making you. Does that make sense, Ramadan? It's very, very important to understand. Tell you. And like I said, we talked about that at length. Have something that you read. What I would recommend that would make it easy for you and consistent for you, right? Because it might be hard if you try to carve out a time every day. That might be challenging. But think of something that you got to do every day, and you got to do it. What's something you got to do every day?
Fajr in the morning, Isha at night.
Fajr in the morning, Isha at night, and what else? Dhuhr, and Asr, and Maghrib. 5, every day you got to pray. Every day you got to pray. So look it. The easiest way to make sure that you do something, right? Especially if you're trying to add something, like a habit into your life, attach it to something that you got to do. Every time I go to work, I do this. Because you got to go to work. So now, you got to pray 5 times a day. Every time you pray, say, I'm going to read for 5 minutes afterwards. Or I'm going to read for just 2 pages. Or a page, 1 page. If you did that after every prayer, how many pages would you read in a day? 5 pages. Sheikh, there's only 20 pages in a juz. So if you did that every day, how many days would it take you to finish 1 juz? 4 days. If you finish a juz every 4 days, how long is it going to take you to finish the whole Quran? 120 days? How much, y'all?
120 days.
Is that how much it is, Sheikh?
No.
To finish the whole Quran. How much is 120 days? 4 months. To finish the whole Quran. If you just did just 1 page after every salah. But it doesn't have to be that. Whatever's easiest for you. Tayyib? All right. So now, and the Sheikh, he goes on to talk about how important the Quran is and how it is truly an encompassing remedy for everything. And he does mention some stories, for example, about Surah Al-Fatiha in particular, right? And how that is a cure-all. And then also, of course, قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ النَّاسِ قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ الْفَلَقِ قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ. But in particular, the first 2, the Mu'awwidhatan. And you should teach your young to do this. You should be doing it yourself, obviously, and you should be teaching your young. Listen, that when you go to sleep, you read this, you do, wipe over yourself. You should be teaching them to do that. That they look at the Quran as something like this is a remedy, a protection, right? I'm sure any parent in here is concerned for their children, for the ayn, for the evil eye. And the Prophet ﷺ, he said, Al-aynu haqq. No doubt there's truth, it's true, right? That somebody could, they like what you have, they see what you have, and they give you what's known as the eye, the evil eye. And somehow that thing, son becomes sick, or that thing that you have messes up, or whatever. In Islam, we believe that, right? And how you can protect yourself? is with certain portions of the Quran and reading them on a regular basis. طيب. So today, what we have, inshallah, the Sheikh, he says that the Quran, that's the top. That's the best remedy that you can have. Make sure you have a relationship with it. And the best way that I could think of in the context of medicine and remedy and sicknesses, think about it like this when we're talking about take it on a daily basis. Right? There's an expression in Arabic, right? What is it? Wiqaya khayrun min al-ilaj. Prevention is better than the cure. Prevention is better than the cure. All right? So now, when do you take your multivitamins? How often do you take those? I'm asking y'all. When do you take your multivitamins? Or at least you're supposed to. Every morning. You're supposed to do that every day. Right? Vitamin C, vitamin D, whatever. That's on a daily basis. Not because you're sick, but to support and boost your immune system, to support and boost your health, to support your bone density, your brain, all that stuff, right? You do that on a daily basis. Not because you're sick, but to prevent getting sick, to make you stronger. When we say read the Quran on a daily basis, and that it is a cure-all for sicknesses and ailments and issues, it's like that. That's why I take it on a daily basis. Not because you got a problem now and you're sick, but so you can stave that off and prevent that from happening altogether. So, and then the second thing that he goes on to say is a dua, right? This is what he goes into now. And he says that the next best thing is a dua. He says, فَصْلٌ الدُّعَاءُ مِنْ أَنْفَعِ الْأَدْوِيَةِ وَالدُّعَاءُ مِنْ أَنْفَعِ الْأَدْوِيَةِ وَهُوَ عَدُوُّ الْبَلَاءِ يدافعه ويعالجه ويمنع نزوله ويرفعه أو يخففه إذا نزل وهو سلاح المؤمن. So he says that dua. And dua, the linguistic meaning of it, it means to call out. It also means to give an invitation, right? So when you invite someone, that's considered a da'wah, right? It also means when you're inviting to Islam, for example, that's why it's called da'wah, because you're given an invitation, right? All right. But in this context, Islamically, right, it means, right, to call out and to ask and request of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's what dua is, all right? It's a request. You're asking for something from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And he says that dua is from one of the most effective and beneficial cures and remedies, right? And it is actually the enemy of bala, the enemy of problems, issues, and even sins, right? Because bala can be considered also like sins. He said it defends against it, it is a remedy and a cure for it, and it can even prevent from certain issues and problems and calamities coming down in your life. And if they're already there, it could be a means of alleviating it, yarfa'uhu, that it could alleviate and remove it from you. Or if it doesn't outright remove it, it can lighten it for you, right? If it does come down. And at the end of the day, he says, what? That dua is like the weapon of the believer, right? You're calling on Allah. You're calling on Allah is like it is your greatest weapon, right? And he continues on with that imagery, right? Of it being like a weapon. He says, وَلَهُ مَعَ الْبَلَاءِ ثَلَاثَةُ مَقَامَاتٍ أَحَدُهَا أَنْ يَكُونَ أَقْوَى مِنَ الْبَلَاءِ فَيَدْفَعُهُ الثاني أن يكون أضعف من البلاء فيقوى عليه بلاء فيصاب به العبد ولكنه قد يخففه وإن كان ضعيفا الثالث أن يتقاوم ويمنع كل واحد منهما صاحبه. So he continues with the idea of it being like a weapon and it fighting. And he says that there are essentially 3 different scenarios where your dua is trying to fight against some type of bala, some challenge or some issue that might come into your life. And there's 3 scenarios where dua, or stations that dua has with it. He said the first one is that something bad is supposed to happen to you. Something bad is supposed to happen to you. And that the dua that you make, the prayer that you make, you're calling out to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, comes and defends you. It's stronger than whatever was supposed to harm you, whatever was supposed to hurt you, whatever was supposed to come and happen into your life. It's stronger than it, and it overcomes it entirely. And you are protected. Through your what, y'all? Through your what? Your dua. He said the second thing, أن يكون أضعف من البلاء فيقوى عليه البلاء فيصاب به العبد ولكنه يخففه وإن كان ضعيفا. He said the second scenario is that your dua comes to defend you from whatever might come to harm you, and as they're fighting, right, it's not strong. Your dua is not strong enough. Whether it's your faith, your conviction, right, or there's something else in your life that's weakening your dua, but for whatever reason, it's weaker than what's supposed to happen to you, right? And so it still happens to you, whatever that was, but it lightens the load, right? So instead of hitting you 100%, maybe it hits you 75%, 40%, 50%, but it lightens, right? Whatever that problem that was supposed to happen to you, right? And then he said, thirdly, is that أن يتقاوم ويمنع كل واحد منهما صاحبه. He said, or when they come and hit each other, there's an outright stalemate. And it continues doing that until the day of judgment. So before I go on with what he mentions about dua, there's some things that I want y'all to understand about dua, and how important it is. First of all, a dua, the Prophet ﷺ, he mentions, right, and this hadith is narrated by Nu'man ibn Bashir, right, that a dua huwa al-ibadah. That you making that supplication, when you raise your hands and you say, oh Allah, I need help. Oh Allah, I need guidance. Oh Allah, I'm hungry. Oh Allah, I'm misguided. Oh Allah, I'm afraid. Or whatever it is, right? When you do that, he said that is the essence of worship. That is the essence of worship. Because in Islam, dua, or scholars explain, are of two types. There's what's known as dua al-hal, and there's what's known as dua al-mas'ala. What did we just say, Sheikh? Dua what? We said there's two kinds of dua. What are they? All right, pay attention closely. What is it? Dua what? All right, stay with me, all right? Sheikh. That's one. Dua al-mas'ala. What did he just say? Mas'ala. And what was the second one? You didn't say. He didn't say. What's the second one, y'all? Dua al-hal. Dua al-hal, it literally means like your state, your condition. That's what it means. Like right now, your hal, your state is that you're sitting down, all right? But that's not what it means. It doesn't mean like you're sitting down. But dua al-hal would mean you make hajj. And when you are in the state of hajj, you're wearing the ihram, you've paid $7,000, you went to the airport, you got your passport, you went to the, to Mecca, you're at the hotel, you're making tawaf at the Kaaba, all that, your state. When you're in that state, you are asking Allah, by you doing that, oh Allah, grant me Jannah, oh Allah, I'm asking you to protect me from the hellfire. It is implicit in you doing that. Because the only reason why you would spend $7,000, $10,000 to go to wear two towels and walk around, right, the Kaaba, hopefully for the sake of Allah, because of the reward that you're hoping from Allah for paradise. Y'all understand that? Tayyib. You pray the 5 daily prayers, right? You do that, why? When you're in that state, when you say Allahu Akbar, and you're in that state, that hal of standing in front of Allah, and you're making ruku, and you're making sujood, and you're saying those words, reading from the Quran. In that hal, or in that state, you are asking Allah, by me doing this, oh Allah, I'm hoping that you'll give me paradise, you'll protect me from the hellfire. Does that make sense, y'all? To make it unequivocally clear, I remember when I was a kid, whenever I used to do something wrong, my mom would tell me, you want me to whoop you, don't you? Wallahi, that's what she would say. You want me to whoop you, don't you? I'm like, no. Why would you say I don't want you to whoop me? She'd be like, what you're doing right now, you're not saying it with your mouth, but the actions that you're doing right now is telling me something. And this is what it's telling me. Do you understand? Y'all understand that? By that prayer, you're asking Allah for something. By that sadaqah, that charity that you give, you're asking Allah for something. So that's one. That's called what, y'all? Dua al-hal. Can y'all say that? Dua al-hal. That's one. Then the second one is called Dua al-mas'ala. Right? I need y'all to say that. Dua al-mas'ala. What is it called, Sheikh? And what's the first one called? And what's the second one called, Sheikh? Jazakallah khair. And what's the first one called? And what's the second one? This guy directly behind you. What's the first one called? No, I said directly behind you. This guy. So point to him so he understands. Otherwise, he's going to do the same thing you're doing. Can you point to him for me real quick? I'm talking to you. Yes. What's the first one called? And what's the second one? Not nas'ala, but mas'ala. All right. So that one is you explicitly asking, directly asking for what you want. Oh Allah, grant me Jannah. You saying it expressly. Oh Allah, I'm broke. Please enrich me. You are the one who is all rich. Oh Allah, you are all wise. I'm struggling through this situation. I need wisdom. Grant me wisdom, oh Allah, so I don't do something stupid. Allahumma ameen. Allahumma ameen. Now, you understand? You're directly asking for what you want. All right? Now, these two right here, right? For that reason, that dua is essentially everything that you do in Islam is a dua. When you go to work, right? And you make sure that your work is halal, meaning that it's permissible. You're not doing something impermissible with it. And you have the right intention. You're hoping, oh Allah, that's a dua. Because you're hoping that Allah will enrich you and you're asking Him to provide for you through this means. That even your work can be dua. When you're raising your kids and you're hoping, Ya Allah, I'm trying to do this the right way. I'm trying to do it the way that you want in Islam. Oh Allah, please guide them. And through this, grant me Jannah by me doing this. And so everything you do, if you have the right intention and it's solely and only for the sake of Allah, right? In essence, you are hoping that Allah will give you something. And in essence, you are hoping that Allah will protect you from something. What are you hoping that He'll protect you from, Sheikh? Yes, protect you from what? What do we all want Allah to protect us from? From what? We want Him to protect us from everything? What? Harm's way. What do we ultimately want Allah to protect us from? From what? Ultimately. Not shaitan. Go ahead, Sheikh. You know what it is. From the hellfire. That's ultimately what we all want. At the end of the day. Now, tell you. And so, subhanAllah, that's one. Now, the other thing is, right, not only is it the essence of everything that we do, right, and it's encapsulated in those two things that I just mentioned, but also it's the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He commanded us to make dua to Him. وَقَالَ رَبُّكُمْ ادْعُونِي أَسْتَجِبْ لَكُمْ إِنَّ الَّذِينَ يَسْتَكْبِرُونَ عَنْ عِبَادَتِي سَيَدْخُلُونَ جَهَنَّمَ دَاخِرِينَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, and my Lord says, وَقَالَ رَبُّكُمْ ادْعُونِي. Call on me, supplicate to me, ask of me, request of me. أَسْتَجِبْ لَكُمْ. Then I will answer you, I will respond. إِنَّ الَّذِينَ يَسْتَكْبِرُونَ عَنْ عِبَادَتِي. Those who are too proud, too haughty, too arrogant to worship me. And notice, he started by calling it dua. Ud'uni. And then that same act, he later on calls it what? Ibadah. And this is where you get the concept and the idea that dua is ibadah, right? But he says whoever's too proud to do it, then know for sure that they will enter into the hellfire humiliated and disgraced and shameful. Who are they? Those people who they ain't got time to be making dua. I'm too busy. I'm strong enough. I have enough money. I have enough intelligence. I have enough resource. I don't need it. And so the Prophet ﷺ, he actually says, right, that whoever does not call on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then he becomes angry with them. Right? That whoever doesn't make dua to Allah, yaghdab alayh. So you have the command of Allah telling us that we should make dua to Him on a regular basis. Number two, if you don't, Allah becomes angry with you. And I've explained that multiple times. Why would Allah become angry with you if you don't call on Him? Sheikh in the back. Yes. Why would He get angry with you if you do not call on Him? And if you're not sure, what do you think? If you do not make dua, you don't ask Allah, you don't ask Him for guidance, you don't ask Him for help, you don't ask Him for rizq, provisions, you don't ask Him for anything, He becomes angry when that happens. Why would He become angry?
It means that you don't need him.
Because it implies that you don't need Him. When you don't ask Allah, it implies what, Sheikh? It implies what? No, you, Mr. Believe, Achieve, Mave Nation. It implies what?
You don't need him.
That you don't need Him. And I'm asking you, do you need Allah? How often do you need Allah? I'm asking you now.
I need Allah all the time because I wouldn't be here without Him.
All the time. We wouldn't be here without Him. Every second, every minute, every hour, every day. 8. 366 days out the year. We need Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I know what I said, Sheikh. I know what you're thinking. Huh?
25-8.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I'm listening.
More than, all the time.
Yeah, I'm still studying 25-8 though.
I know it's 24/7, but more than that.
Okay.
We need Allah at all times.
Up for you.
Yeah. You understand?
I understand.
No. I'll tell you. All right, so now the Sheikh, he's going to explain, we're going to go through, namely, 3 more things right now, all right? Number 1 are some ideas that you need to have about dua. That's 1. 2 are some things that you should avoid, things that prevent your dua. And then number 3 are some things that you need to do, kind of like the etiquettes and the adab of dua itself. Some things that you should have in your mind, some concepts, some things that you should not do, that you should avoid and stay away from, and then some things that, the etiquettes of dua. All right? خلاص معي؟ خلي بالك شوية ها؟ خلي بالك إن شاء الله. طيب. So, first thing that he says, right? One of the most beneficial things that you can do when it comes to dua is what's known as al-ilhahu fi dua, which means persistence, right? It means persistence. And what he's talking about when he says being persistent in your dua is that you don't just ask once or twice, right? You don't just ask once or twice, but rather you keep asking, right, until you get what you need. But you don't stop asking. So, the reason is because he said, وَمِنَ الْآفَاتِ التي تمنع ترتب أثر الدعاء عليه أن يستعجل العبد ويستبطئ الإجابة فيستحسر ويدع الدعاء وهو بمنزلة من بذر بذرا أو غرس غرسا فجعل يتعاهد ويسقي فلما استبطأ كماله وإدراكه تركه وأهمله. وفي صحيح البخاري من حديث أبي هريرة رضي الله تعالى عنه أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال يستجاب لأحدكم ما لم يعجل يقول دعوت فلم يستجب لي. So he says, listen, one of the things that counteract the effectiveness of your dua is that you make dua once or twice and then you stop, right? And essentially what you're saying is, I asked Allah, I asked him a couple times, I didn't see nothing happen, so I stopped asking him. And then he says, that's like somebody who's like a farmer or somebody who plants a seed. They plant a seed, right? They put it in the ground, they close it up or whatever, right? And then they water it for like a day or two. And then after that, they're like sitting around, they're waiting after a day or two. No seed comes, or excuse me, not no seed, but like no tree comes out, no fruit are born, and they're like, forget it, khalas, I'm done. And is that how when you plant something, is that how it works? No matter how small it is. You water it for 1 or 2 days and that's it? No. It's going to take time. But if you're patient and you continually water it and you continually are mindful of it and you take care of it, right? Then that seed will get a sprout. And then that sprout will become a stock. And then that stock, right, will become, it'll have firm roots. Then it'll have branches. And then gradually, eventually, it'll bear fruit. But it takes what? It takes time. And taking time, that means from you, it needs patience and persistence. And that persistence is called al-ilha. So if you have something that you need, something that you're struggling with, you're struggling at school. I don't understand this math. I don't understand. There's somebody in socially. I'm struggling with friends, or I'm struggling with a bully, or whatever it might be. Right? For those of you who are young, right? I'm struggling with family, or I'm struggling at my work. While you're struggling with that, you don't make dua once or twice and be like, well, Allah hasn't fixed everything mystically, magically, so khalas, then I quit. He must not be listening to me. And the reason is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? What does he want from us in that process of making dua? And what does persistence show? Persistence shows that whatever it is that you're asking for, that you genuinely need it and want it. It shows desperation. It shows that you didn't just ask just because and you're just going through the motions, right? You ever see somebody like they're begging for something? Please, I need this. I'll do anything. Please, just give me what I need. That's what he wants from us. Is that us showing him that need and that desperation. Because when you feel that, when you have that sense, right, for nobody else, you should never feel like that for anybody else. That desperation and that dire need, that should only be between you and who? You and who, y'all? And the best example that I can think of when you think of being desperate and in need, imagine being in the middle of the ocean. And there's no shore. And you're on a plank of wood out there drifting. And you don't see nobody. And then you ask Allah. Ain't nobody else. How desperate would you be? Sharks is circling. And Allahu Alam, what you can't see in the water, right? How desperate would you be in asking for help and aid from Allah? It would be from the bottom of the depths of your heart. You would be so genuine and sincere. Allah, I swear I'll never do X, Y, and Z. I don't do that. I don't know how you're going to do it, Allah, but just please save me. Allah wants that from us. That feeling, Allah wants that from us. Because it is you acknowledging and recognizing your status and your station. That you are weak. We are weak. That we are ignorant. That we are broke. That we are misguided, except by Allah. And sometimes you might be going through something. You might be struggling and dealing with something because you forgot that. And in forgetting that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala hit you upside the head with something to wake you up and remind you got to come back to me. You forgot that you needed me. So this is happening to you. It's not meant to break you. It's not meant to rip you apart. But it's meant to bring you back to me. To remind you that you need me. Allah doesn't need us. We need him at all times. So, what can So we said the thing that you need is persistence, and that persistence shows desperation and genuine actual need. All right. Then the Sheikh, he goes on, and I'm sorry, he mentioned a hadith that's narrated in Sahih Bukhari, right, where the Prophet ﷺ, he said that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will answer you so long as you are not hasty in the expectation of the answer. And the way that you show that hastiness, right, and that impatience is that you call on Allah and you say, I called on Him and I didn't get an answer, and so you stop making dua. Right? طيب. Then he goes on, حضور القلب مع الدعاء وإذا جمع مع الدعاء حضور القلب وجمعيته بكليته على المطلوب وصادف وقتا من أوقات الإجابة الستة وهي ثلث الأخير من الليل وعند الأذان وبين الأذان والإقامة وأدبار الصلوات المكتوبات وعند صعود الإمام يوم الجمعة على المنبر حتى تقضى الصلاة وآخر ساعة بعد العصر من ذلك اليوم وصادف خشوعا في القلب وانكسارا بين يدي ربي وذلا له وتضرعا ورقة. Okay, right. So he says, listen, if your dua, so now he's going to talk about the times of dua, right? What are the best times to make dua, right? He says, listen, if your dua and your focus of your heart, you have a presence of heart. You ever heard the expression, you got to put your heart into it? Huh? He says your heart has to be present. You can't be thinking about spreadsheets and emails or, you know what I'm saying, what's going to happen on the game tonight or whatever. You got to be focused on, in your heart, on Allah and what you're asking for. He said if all of that comes together and you're being persistent and you come with the right etiquettes and it comes at the right time, and then he mentions what those times are. Number one, and I want y'all to pay attention and remember these times. Number one is the last third of the night. The last third of the night. So right now, Fajr comes in, what? 5:15, give or take, right? So the last third of the night would be somewhere around 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning, give or take. All right? But you getting up in the middle of the night and asking Allah for what you need. And the reason why that he mentions that particular time, because there's a hadith where the Prophet ﷺ mentions that يَنْزِلُ رَبُّنَا إِلَى السَّمَاءِ الدُّنْيَا حِينَ يَبْقَى ثُلُثَ اللَّيْلِ الْأَخِيرِ. He said that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala descends to the last heaven in the last third of the night. And he calls out, right? Who is asking of me so that I can give them? Who is making dua to me so that I can fulfill his request? Who's asking for forgiveness so that I can forgive him? Right? So that's number one, the last third of the night. That's one of those special times. The next one is at the adhan, right? That the dua, like after the adhan, there's the du'as that you're supposed to make. Obviously, the best du'as are those that come from the Quran and the Sunnah, but any dua that you make is fine. Then bain al-adhanayn, the adhan and the iqamah. Between the adhan and the iqamah. How many we got so far, y'all? 3 times so far. Then number 4, at the end of the salah, it says وَأَدْبَارُ الصَّلَوَاتِ الْمَكْتُوبَاتِ. At the end of the prayer. And to clarify, it's not you say Salamu alaykum wa rahmatullah, Salamu alaykum wa rahmatullah, and then you make dua. Right? But actually, after you finish, at-tahiyatu lillah, after you finish that, if you're praying in the jama'ah, and the imam has not said Assalamu alaykum wa rahmatullah, Assalamu alaykum wa rahmatullah, you can make dua at that time, before he makes the taslim. Right? And that's at the tail end of the prayer. Before the taslim. And it's a brief period of time, right? It's usually pretty short. Or if you're praying yourself, obviously you can prolong it, but making dua at that time. Before the taslim. Play him. So that, yeah, what's up?
Do it mess up your prayer after you say Assalamu alaikum?
It does not mess up your prayer, right? But then it's not included in this, right? But can you or should you make dua after the salah? Right? It's best if you do the way what the Prophet ﷺ said, right? Yes, and then when the عند صعود الإمام يوم الجمعة, when the imam, when he goes up the minbar until the prayer is finished, right? Until the prayer is finished. When the imam goes up the minbar, right, and then he starts the khutbah, from that time until the Salatul Jumu'ah is prayed, in between there. طيب. Sheikh, we're almost done. وانكسار بين اللهم صل على محمد. And then the last hour, right? وآخر ساعة بعد العصر. And he said in the last hour after Salat al-Asr of that same day, meaning the day of Jumu'ah. All right? So there are 6 times that we mentioned. Who can tell me what those 6 times are? What are those 6 times? Real quick, because they're about to come and use the room too. Tayyib, just tell me one. Tell me one. One time out of the 6. The first third, the middle third, or the last third? The last third of the night. Jazakallah khair. Another one. I'm pointing directly at you, brother. Yes. Before the taslim. Naam, at the end of the salah. And we're talking, he said salawat al-maktubat, meaning the 5 daily prayers. So not the sunan, but during the 5 daily prayers. All right, that's 2. What's the third one? عند الأذان. Yes, so at the adhan. 4. Between the adhan and the iqamah. 5. Help him out, y'all. Don't leave him hanging. Anybody? Yeah, what's up, Sheikh?
During the start of the khutbah until I do not until the prayer is finished.
No, when the imam goes up the minbar, in the su'ud al-imam al-minbar, right? Until the end of the prayer. Now, I want to clarify something about that. Are you supposed to be making dua while the imam is giving the khutbah? No. You shouldn't be talking, right? You shouldn't, and some people, they don't even recognize this. Sometimes somebody will come in and they say, Assalamu alaikum, right? Or some people even answer their phone. I've even seen people answer their phone and say, I'm in Jummah prayer. And they like hang up their phone, right? You are not supposed to be doing anything. Even if somebody says Assalamu alaikum to you, right? You shouldn't respond back during the Jummah, right? When you're in the khutbah. Shouldn't be talking at all. Matter of fact, as much as possible, you should be hyper-focused, not fidgeting, moving around, doing whatever. Unless you got like a sore back or something, or you got your sciaticas acting up. You know, may Allah cure you, Allahumma ameen. But yeah, you shouldn't be moving around. So then what should you be doing there? What is he talking about? The dua is going to be answered. Well, there is a time at the end when the imam makes dua. And everybody's supposed to be saying what? Ameen. Right? Those du'as are accepted. All right? But you yourself, you shouldn't be talking during the Jummah. All right? Just to clarify that. And then there was one more. What was the last one? An hour after Asr on the day of Jummah. Now, and there's a lot there. There's a difference of opinion among scholars when that exact hour is for the day of Jummah. Some scholars of the opinion that it's all day of Jummah from the nighttime of Thursday, which is when Jummah begins, right, up until Maghrib. There are some who are of that opinion. There's a lot of different opinions, but obviously the opinion of Imam Al-Qayyim rahimahullah is that it's at the time that he mentioned, right? An hour after Asr. Anyways, so now وآخر ساعة بعد العصر. Yes, an hour after Asr. Yep. He said وصادف خشوعا في القلب وانكسارا. And then these are some that you have humility in your heart, wankisara, and there's a brokenness, meaning a desperation that you have, right? And when we say desperation and brokenness, understand what we mean, right? That when you ask, you don't say, oh Allah, grant me this. If you want to give it to me, it's all good. You don't want to give it to me, whatever, it's okay. That would not be somebody who's desperate. Desperation is like, if any of you have dealt with little kids, when they ask you for something and they keep asking you to the extent that they bother you, right? And they're like, please, please, I want it. Please let me get the iPad. Please let me get the phone. Please let me get some, right? And they keep asking, they keep asking, they keep asking. They won't be quiet. They won't shut up, right? Like you really, really want it. This is very, very important when it comes to the psychology and the mindset that you should have when you're making dua. Right? Now, what are the actual physical etiquettes? We're going to go through them quickly here. Number one, the Sheikh he mentions istiqbal al-qibla, right? Facing the qibla. That's number one. So whichever way that you pray, making dua. And just to note, this is not required, right? But this is just from the etiquette. يعني من الآداب. ليس بواجب, لكن هذا من الإحسان وفضل. Secondly, that you are on tahara. And tahara meaning you have wudu. All right? Number three, that you raise your hands. Don't just sit there like this, right? Don't do this, like this, right? And what does this look like, y'all? What does this look like? Like you begging. Because you are. Or at least you should be, right? And it also implies like, give me in my hands. What I'm asking you for, please give it to me. All right? طيب. وَبَدَأْ بِحَمْدِ اللَّهِ وَثَنَاءَ عَلَيْهِ. And that what you start with, you don't just jump right into asking for whatever it is that you want, but rather you start by praising and thanking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? That He's so great, that He's so magnificent, that He's the all-hearing, that He's the all-seeing, that He's the Lord of all that exists, that He's the Lord of all the worlds. Praising Him and saying good things about Him, right? This is what is appropriate, right? That you start out with this type of etiquette, because it shows that you are acknowledging and recognizing that He is our master, and you are His servant and His slave, and you are praising your master, right? Before you ask for what you want. Then next, after that, you still don't jump into asking for what you want. Then you pray, you send peace and blessings. You pray for the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? He said, ثم ثنى بالصلاة على محمد عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وسلم. So now you Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala ali Muhammad, right? Salat Ibrahimiyya or whatever, but salat and salams on the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Then after that, right? Then you make tawbah, right? Meaning that you and istighfar. ثم قدم بين يدي حاجته التوبة والاستغفار. So you still haven't asked for what you want. You now are making tawbah and istighfar, i.e., you are essentially asking Allah, you're like spiritually purifying yourself. You physically purified and cleansed yourself by making the wudu, like you are about to pray. Now you are spiritually cleansing yourself so that you can, because when you make tawbah, the Prophet ﷺ, he said tawbah wipes out and cleanses what came before it. So now you're physically clean and spiritually clean when you make tawbah. And then once you've done that, right, then whatever you ask for, وَتَوَصَّلَ إِلَيْهِ بِأَسْمَائِهِ وَصِفَاتِهِ وَتَوْحِيدِهِ. Then whatever you're asking for, you use the names and attributes that are related to what you're asking for. So if you're sick and you ask Allah to cure you, Ya Shafi. If you are asking for provisions, you're looking for a job, you say Ya Ar-Raziq or Ya Ar-Razzaq. Those names that are related to what you're asking for. وَلِلَّهِ الْأَسْمَاءَ الْحُسْنَى فَادْعُوهُ بِهَا. And for Allah are the most beautiful and the most excellent of names, so call on Him by those names. Right? If you messed up and you made a mistake or you did some haram, Ya Al-Ghaffar, Ya Al-Ghafur, Ya Ar-Rahman, Ya Ar-Rahim. طيب. Then after that, وَقَدَّمَ بَيْنَ يَدَيْ دُعَائِهِ صَدَقَةٍ. Then you go ahead and ask what you're asking for. And the Sheikh, he even adds like one last thing. He said if you give sadaqah before you even sat down to make dua, right? But he concludes by saying, فَإِنَّ هَذَا الدُّعَاء لَا يَكَادُ يرد أبدا ولا سيما إن صادف الأدعية التي أخبر النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أنها مظنة الإجابة أو أنها متضمنة للاسم الأعظم. He said these things when they all come together, when they coalesce together, right? You choosing these times, you being persistent, you following those etiquettes, etc. He said when all those things come together, he said it's almost impossible that Allah is not going to answer your dua if you did all these things. He's like, this is the closest you're going to get to a guarantee that Allah is going to answer your dua. Right? When all these things happen. right? And then, obviously, there's more to be mentioned that he talks about, but we're going to forego that, inshallah. The thing that I wanted to mention, that we'll mention next week, are things that prevent your dua from being accepted. Things that prevent your dua from being accepted. That was the last part we wanted to talk about. But we're going to stop here. Wa sallallahu wa sallam ala nabiyyina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Wa akhir da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin.